I'm Patrick Lancaster, and the situation on the streets of the United States is exploding. Just this weekend was the biggest one-day protest in the United States in history. Shots have been fired, people have been killed in these protests, and assassinations have happened of government leaders in the United States by supposed supporters of this No Kings protest. And much more is going on, including the clashes between the U.S. military and protesters on the streets of the United States, which resulted in our military arresting our citizens in protests. Let's get into it. The No Kings protest is a demonstration that was organized on June 14th on the day of the 25th anniversary of the U.S. Army and Donald Trump's 79th anniversary in protest of the policies in Donald Trump's second presidency and his actions as part of the 50501 movement. Now, what is that movement? Well, the 50501 movement is a political action group that was organized nationwide in protests against the second term of Donald Trump's administration. And it started early this year. The name 50501 is short for 50 protests, 50 states, one movement. These protests are aimed to demonstrate opposition to the administration's policies and actions. And we know this movement is causing intense unrest in the United States. And in fact, this No Kings protest is, as I said, the biggest one-day protest in the U.S. history. Almost 2% reportedly of the population of the United States came out in protest. Those are the numbers that are coming out now. Now, this is more than any other protest. Even the famous Vietnam protests in '69 only had 2 million. These protests on the 14th had around 5 million. Even with the corrections in the population taken into account, it's still much more. The Vietnam protests were about 1.2% of the population, and these protests for No Kings was over 1.9. So a lot of people are coming out. The political atmosphere is tearing the U.S. apart right now. There has, as I said, military personnel guarding the streets, fighting with protesters, arresting protesters. And not only is this unrest causing damage to businesses, government properties, and personal property, but people are dying now. In Salt Lake City, there were shots fired, which resulted in at least one man losing his life.
Oh my God, that's a gun. That's a gun. Come on. Come on. Get out. Get over here. Jay, come here. That was a gun. Okay. Okay.
The Salt Lake Police Chief, Brian Reed, said, "Our victim was not the intended target." Artua Gamboa, a 24-year-old, was taken into custody on Sunday for a murder charge, said the police chief. Lu was taken into the hospital on Saturday evening where he had succumbed to his injuries and tragically died. Reed said a man in a brightly colored vest fired 3 shots at Gamboa, which caused minor injuries to him. So what actually happened? The reports coming out say that 2 Peacekeepers from Salt Lake City saw Gamboa separating from the crowd of marchers in downtown Salt Lake City and moved behind a wall to retrieve a rifle. When these 2 men confronted Gamboa with their handguns drawn, now these are not police, these are Peacekeepers. Witnesses say Gamboa raised his rifle into a firing position and ran into the crowd. That's when one of the men in the bright vest shot 3 rounds, hitting Gamboa and A. Liu. And Gamboa, who police say didn't have a criminal history, was wounded and treated before being booked into jail. Detectives say they don't yet know why Gamboa pulled out a rifle or ran from the Peacekeepers, but they accused him of creating the dangerous situation that led to A. Liu's death. The Associated Press did not immediately find an attorney listed for Gamboa or contact information for his family in public records. The gunshots sent hundreds of protesters, some hiding behind barriers, fleeing into the parking lots and parking garages in nearby businesses, police said. That's a gun. Come on, get out. Someone can be heard saying in the video posted on social media that appears to show the events.
Our preliminary investigation shows that our victim was not the intended target, but rather an innocent bystander participating in the demonstration. Shortly after the shooting, officers and detectives were flagged down near 100 South, 200 East, and there they found a man later identified as 24-year-old Arturo Gamboa. He had a minor gunshot wound and was hiding in a group of people. At the time of his arrest, officers also recovered an AR-15 style rifle, a gas mask, and a backpack. Gamboa was treated and later booked into jail on a charge of murder. At the time of the incident, we also detained 2 other individuals. These individuals were wearing high visibility neon vests and were armed and possibly part of the event's peacekeeping team. Based on early witness statements, these men saw Gamboa separate from the crowd at one point during the march and move behind a wall where they noticed him pull out a rifle and begin manipulating it. Gamboa was then confronted by these 2 men. Witnesses say Gamboa raised the weapon in a firing position and began running toward the crowd. One of the individuals fired 3 rounds, striking Gamboa and tragically striking the man who later died.
All right, and we can see how things can be twisted in the media and you don't really know what's happening. We see here that now reports are saying that this man that was arrested for murder didn't actually shoot anyone. It's the so-called Peacekeepers in Salt Lake City that killed this man. So I think we've seen that before in other protests across the United States, haven't we? And this never works out well. Now, the 50501 movement organizers organized this protest and say they condemn violence. Well, we're seeing violence all across the United States in these protests and riots. I mean, we can say, yeah, okay, maybe some of them are peaceful, but so much information is coming out showing unpeaceful movements. And even before the No Kings protest started, protesters were storming the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., clashing with police, destroying barricades, which resulted in dozens being arrested. And in Portland, the ICE building was besieged again by protesters, and it resulted in police forces and security forces launching gas grenades on the protesters and drawing their weapons, which appear to be live rounds. 9mm is what commentators in the video had to say about it.
What the fuck? Dude. That's a fucking, is that not a gun? Yeah, that's a metal gun. That's a pistol. So it's like a 9mm.
And here's another location, this time in Seattle, where police are clashing with rioters and gas grenades are being deployed. And here protesters, rioters, are climbing the fences to get around police lines in Los Angeles. And as a result, we can see the violent clashes and arrests between U.S. Customs, Border Control, and these protesters in Los Angeles. Horses running through the streets of L.A., police giving orders to clear the streets of LA. In Texas, they had to even evacuate the Capitol building for these No Kings protests for a credible threat against state lawmakers. And here we can see protesters saying, shame on you to U.S. Marines and other police that are guarding the federal buildings in LA, which closely follows the clashes erupting between these groups. And in Minneapolis, unfortunately, 2 lawmakers were assassinated, and there was an assassination against a senator. And police say that the perpetrator of these assassinations was a supporter of the No Kings protest, which they say they got that information because in his vehicle there were No Kings protest flyers.
We're here today because an unspeakable tragedy has unfolded in Minnesota. My good friend and colleague, Speaker Melissa and her husband Mark, were shot and killed early this morning in what appears to be a politically motivated assassination. Our state lost a great leader, and I lost a dearest of friends. Speaker Hortman was someone who served the people of Minnesota with grace, compassion, humor, and a sense of service. She was a formidable public servant, a fixture and a giant in Minnesota. She woke up every day determined to make this state a better place. She is irreplaceable, and we've been missed by so many. Minnesota's thoughts and prayers are with her family, her loved ones, her children, and her parents.
We don't have any direct links. However, there were some flyers that said No Kings within the suspect vehicle. And as we know, the planned events throughout the state of Minnesota today is a No Kings event.
And here we can see the first U.S. citizen or U.S. rioter being arrested by U.S. Marines in history, purportedly. And Trump kind of bragged a bit on Twitter about the appeals court ruling that said he could keep the National Guardsmen in these cities protecting the streets. And also, Democrat Senator Alex Padilla was arrested or detained or forcefully removed, however you want to look at it, when a little forcefully asking a question or attempting to ask a question to the Homeland Security Secretary. And as I said, biggest day of protests or riots in history in the United States. And images like this here in Texas are popping up all over the U.S. And here you can see protesters clashing with police in New York. It's all over. It was all over the U.S. And when's the last time huge protests like this under a foreign flag, Mexican flags all over these protests, especially in California, has taken place? And back to LA, protesters marching ICE, get out of LA. All right, can you do me a favor? Right now, I want you to go down to the comments below and comment what stood out to you most about what's happening in the States right now. What do you think about it? Which side do you lie on? I'm just giving you a little outside look into what I'm seeing in the different media that are out there right now about what's happening. Of course, I'm not on the ground. Hate reporting like that, but you know what, it is what it is. I'm bringing you something, putting things together for you. Of course, I don't have all the answers, so get other sources. But what sticks out to you the most? What else do you want to see? Should I go cover what's happening in the U.S.? What do you want to see next? What do you think about my new format here? Of course, I'm going to be doing more frontline reports and things like this, but I want to give you more content. I want to do more for you, my viewers. So, let me know of what you think about what's happening in the U.S. And of course, it's such a tragedy, this people losing their lives. Hopefully that stops. But let's communicate. Let me know what you think. Comment below. And also, go down the pinned comments or on the screen and support my work with the donation link. All right, I'm going to keep bringing you as much as I can. Let me know. Work with me here so I can bring you more of what you want to see, because I will only report to you, my viewers. Thanks. Let's show the world together. I'm out.